The year is 476 AD. In the West, the last vestiges of imperial authority have just crumbled. Barbarian tribes sweep across the countryside, sacking cities and sending refugees fleeing for safety. The educated class fears the worst. What has been building up for centuries has finally reached its breaking point. Society as they know it will now fall into a so-called dark age, a time of ignorance and chaos from which humanity will take centuries to emerge. Or maybe not. What if the Roman Empire never fell? How would the world look today if the Eternal City had remained eternal? To answer that question, let's travel back to the year 436 AD. As the Germanic chieftain settles into the throne of the defunct Western Roman Empire, news arrives in Constantinople. Emperor Zeno, a man widely considered to be of low intelligence and questionable legitimacy, has just been deposed by his own son, the future Emperor Leo III. His reign over the rump of the Western Roman Empire was already largely symbolic, consisting of little more than the Italian peninsula and Dalmatia. But even here, his control was tenuous at best. The Visigoths under Alaric II had just made significant gains in southern Gaul, and the Byzantines weren't exactly in a position to send reinforcements. With the Huns to the north and the Persians to the east, the army of the empire was already stretched thin. As he sits on the throne, Zeno ponders whether to retire to a monastery or seek asylum in the east. Either option seems preferable to the violence that is sure to follow. Then out of the blue, a contingent of Roman legionaries enters the city bearing the imperial purple. It is Basilisk, Zeno's younger brother and former co-emperor, along with envoys from the Visigoths. They bring an offer for Zeno, one that will change the course of history forever. The Goths are prepared to swear fealty to Zeno in return for recognition of their gains in Gaul. Not only that, they want to see the emperor wed his daughter Amalafrida to the Gothic king Alaric II, thereby uniting the two realms in a perpetual alliance. This is an unprecedented proposal. For centuries, Rome has seen itself as the ultimate authority over the whole Mediterranean. To accept this treaty would be to admit that Rome is now merely one power among many in Europe, but there's no other choice. With the empire crumbling around him, Zeno finds himself with few friends, and those friends happen to be Goths. Zeno accepts the treaty and the marriage, effectively making Alaric Zeno's heir. From the marriage comes a son, Romulus Augustulus, the first of his bloodline. Over the next few years, the empire sees relative peace. The Gothic kings remain loyal to the imperial family, and throughout Europe, the various barbarian kingdoms acknowledge the supremacy of Rome, though rarely with enthusiasm. Within a century, the Western Roman Empire has become the Gothic Roman Empire, a realm of fierce warriors with a new capital in Toulouse. The Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and Burgundians vie for influence within the imperial court, but all three recognize the legitimacy of the imperial house of Trajan. The peace allows the people of the Old West to focus on more than survival. The region, having been largely spared from the ravages of war, enters a renaissance of sorts. Cathedrals are rebuilt and flourish with decoration. Trade routes reopen, and towns begin to rebuild. Within centuries, northern Italy, France, and Spain rivaled Byzantium in culture and wealth. By the year 1000, the Catholic Church, centered in Rome, was the most powerful institution in Europe, surpassing even the influence of the Holy Eastern Roman Emperor. By the year 1450, Europe looks much different than it did in our timeline. Gone are the numerous independent states that defined the medieval period, the HRE, France, England, Russia. In their place stands the Gothic Roman Empire, the undisputed master of Europe. Their banners even fly over North Africa. Yet despite this territorial unity, political fragmentation persists. While the emperors in Rome are nominally supreme, the various Gothic kings and queens act largely autonomously. The emperor must always tread carefully, balancing the interests of the Goths against the wishes of the Romans. Within this vast empire, cultural diversity flourishes. Latin takes on a new sound as it mingles with the various Germanic dialects, creating a linguistic continuum that stretches from Ireland to the Byzantine provinces. Across the Mediterranean, trade links the Italian peninsula to the Levant and North Africa. Cities like Venice, Genoa, and Pisa grow fat on the riches of the East, while the Ottoman Turks push aggressively west, attempting to break the power of the Christian maritime republics. Further east, the Byzantine Roman Empire faces its own challenges. The once mighty realm has shrunk dramatically. Anatolia, Syria, and Egypt are the core of the empire, but the emperor still controls important territories elsewhere, like Italy, North Africa, and the Iberian Peninsula. Even so, the Byzantine Roman Empire is militarily weaker than its Western counterpart. To protect themselves, they form an alliance with the Kingdom of Georgia, a powerful state rising in the Caucasus. Between them, these two Roman empires stretched from Ireland to the Indus River, controlling the longest continuous stretch of land of any empire in history. The 1400s were a turbulent period for both halves of the Roman Empire. In the west, the Albigensian Crusade devastated southern France. Meanwhile, the eastern half faced the rise of the Ottoman Turks, who took Constantinople in 1453. Despite this setback, the Eastern emperors managed to cling to power until 1480, when the last Paleologan dies without an heir. Fortunately for the empire, a suitable candidate is at hand. The leading noble of the Georgian kingdom, David X, is proclaimed Basileus of the Romans. For the next century, the Byzantine Roman Empire enjoys a golden age. Economic recovery is swift following the Ottoman conquest, and thanks to the introduction of gunpowder weapons, the army is far more effective than it has been in centuries. By 1580, the Ottomans have been pushed back to the Balkans, and though the Georgians cannot conquer Constantinople, they do establish a strong foothold in the city, ensuring it will never again fall to the infidel. But the 1600s were a difficult period for the Western Roman Empire. France, Burgundy, and the Low Countries broke away, establishing the Burgundian Federation. For a time, war rages between the two halves of the former Western Roman Empire. But as the 1700s begin, peace is restored, and the French monarchy recognizes the suzerainty of the House of Trajan. Yet as the two Roman empires enter their second millennium, they face a new challenger. The Americas have been discovered, and the Spanish Habsburgs are attempting to impose their dominance across the Atlantic. Though the Spanish have established a beachhead in Italy, they do not have the strength to challenge Rome directly. Instead, the Habsburgs focus their efforts on the east, where they ally with the Ottoman Sultan and attempt to carve off chunks of the Byzantine Roman Empire. The wars are costly, but the Byzantines persevere, aided by the introduction of printing, which allows them to raise larger armies than ever before. But it is not enough. In 1683, the Ottomans lay siege to Vienna. If the Byzantines are defeated, the papacy in Rome would surely be next. Desperate, the emperor turns to Rome for help, and so it is that the two halves of the Roman Empire reunite, not under one emperor, but under one pope. In 1697, the Treaty of Carnsabes united the two halves of the empire, establishing the Roman Catholic Church as the dominant power in Europe. For the next 2 centuries, popes ruled the continent. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the Spanish Habsburgs continued to acquire territory. By the mid-18th century, they controlled vast areas of Central and South America, but their power peaked with the War of the Austrian Succession. When Holy Roman Emperor Charles II died childless, his lands were divided among his numerous relatives. This led to a massive conflict across Europe, with multiple great powers vying for dominance. In the end, the Habsburg dynasty prevailed, but not without coming out weakened. By the end of the 18th century, the Gothic Roman Empire had become a loose confederation of states. The emperor resided in Rome, but true power rested with the various German, Frankish, and Italian states. Across the Mediterranean, the Byzantine Roman Empire enjoyed a renaissance. The arts and sciences flourished under the benevolent rule of the composite Roman Georgians, but such peace could not last. In 1812, Napoleon invaded Russia. Fearing the instability of a French-dominated Europe, the various German states banded together to form a Holy Roman Germanic Confederation. This alarmed the French, who saw the move as a potential threat to their security. The ensuing conflict ended with the defeat of Napoleon and the establishment of the Frankfurt Germanic Confederation. From this point forward, the Holy Roman Germanic Confederation is the preeminent power in Europe. The British Empire may dominate the seas, but on land, it is the Germanic Roman Confederation that rules supreme. The rest of the 19th century was a period of rapid industrialization in Germany, but it was a development that came at a cost. The working class revolted repeatedly against the harsh conditions in factories, but each revolt was brutally crushed. Meanwhile, across the Mediterranean, the declining Byzantine Roman Empire was forced to contend with the rising power of Russia. Russian designs on the Black Sea alarmed the Byzantines, who turned to the Germans for aid. But the Germans refused to become involved in the conflict. The result was the Russo-Byzantine War, which ended with the Russians seizing control of Constantinople. Though now subject to Russian domination, the Byzantines continued to thrive economically. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 brought untold wealth to the coastal cities, but the prosperity did little to alleviate tensions with their overlords in Moscow. In 1905, the Russian Revolution broke out across the empire. The Germans supported the conservative forces seeking to restore order, while the Russians sided with the revolutionaries. Caught in the middle, the Byzantines attempted to remain neutral, but it proved a losing bet. The revolution succeeded and a communist government was established. Over the next decade, the new Russian Empire negotiated peace with the Byzantines, ceding them the provinces of Anatolia and Armenia in exchange for friendly relations. Now cut off from the rest of the Orthodox world, the Byzantines turned further towards Rome. In 1929, Pope Pius IV visited Constantinople, officially ending the 1,000-year-old schism between the two churches. The 20th century has been an era of upheaval. Both halves of the Roman Empire survived the collapse of the Ancien regime and emerged as major players in the modern world. The two halves reunited in 1939 after the German invasion of Poland. Despite some initial reluctance, the Pope in Rome declared war on the Axis powers and raised the banner of the Roman Empire once again. At the dawn of the 21st century, the world is very different from ours. The Roman Empire never fell, thus changing everything. In Europe, the Holy Roman Germanic Confederation dominates politics. Their standard of living is unmatched in the world. The Roman Catholic Church acts as the moral conscience of Europe. At their side stand the Byzantine Roman Empire, a staunch ally since the 17th century. Their alliance has proven invaluable to the stability of the region. Across the Atlantic, the United Mexican States are the preeminent power in the Americas, ruling from Panama to Argentina. But it is the extraordinary rise of Japan that surprised many. Freed from the constraints of Chinese domination, Japan became an early modern state in the 17th century. But it was their alliance with the Roman Empire that allowed them to surpass their rivals in the West. Today, Tokyo is arguably the most influential city in the world, driving technological innovation and economic growth across the globe. But it is India that is the wild card. Freed from British colonization, India entered the 20th century as a united state. But internal divisions proved fatal. After the partition of India in 1947, both the secular Indian Union and the Islamic Republic of Pakistan developed nuclear weapons. The two nations now eye each other suspiciously across the Himalayas, each poised to strike the other at the first sign of weakness. It is a complex world, one far different from our own, but also strangely familiar. And while it may not be perfect, it is certainly fascinating. And now we want to hear from you. What did you think of this alternate history? Did you learn anything new? And what other history topics would you like us to cover in the future? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.